up in the motherhood. Yeah, you got you some kids up in the motherhood. You'll sleep, life hits a skids. Who am I kidding? I'm not hip anymore. You know why? Because I have older kids. And there are things I wish I'd known earlier on that would have saved me a lot of heartache. About birth order and why kids are the way they are. You know, they say because of the birth order, but it's not just the birth order. I think it's the room in the womb. Because, like, take firstborns. When they are in the womb, it's really tight in there. And so they have to fight for every centimeter. That's why they come out so overachieving, successful people that they are. Then way on down, kids 3, 4, 5, there's a bunch of room in there. Woo, it's been all stretched out by the time they get in there. They're like, yes, I want to just, enjoy my life. Because look, they've even put on an addition here. It's those middle kids. They float around in there. They're like, hey, I get the feeling someone was in here before me. That's not fair. Sorry, middle children. Anyway, I wish I'd known the few successful parent tips back then. The first one is no matter what any brochure says for any vacation spot in America, don't believe them because absolutely nothing is fun for the whole family. Second, if you want to hide a birthday present from any child, you just put it in the dishwasher. They'll never find it there. And the third most important successful parenting tip is no matter what it says on the back of the cough syrup bottle, you can give them just a little bit more. But I'll tell you the problem is now I'm remembering what those ladies told me about how quickly it goes by. And they used to tell me when my kids were little, treasure this time. If you blink, you'll miss it. When I'm in the car with my student driver, I'm just blinking, asking God to miss just a little bit of this. But you can use the uncoolness that you have now as a parent of a teenager to your advantage. Whenever they're not doing what you ask them to do, you just break out and start dancing at them all. Problem solved.
You know, one of the things that makes Christian comedians, or any comedian, so funny is that they hit on real life things, which is why we think they're so funny. Today we're going to talk about children again, and we're going to talk about discipline. You know, it's kind of a crazy world we live in because we have a lot of self-indulgence, and discipline's kind of the odd word, the bad word. And so we're going to really talk about discipline. The Bible tells us, train up a child in the way he should go. And oftentimes when we think of discipline, we kind of think of like the negative to a consequence to a negative behavior. That is what we think of as discipline. That's what comes to our mind, a punishment. But if we think about an athlete who is disciplined, we think about somebody who is training, who is working hard, who's looking for those little things that they can make better all the time. And it's not go out one time and train for a marathon and be done, is it? It is over and over and over again. And I want those words to ring in your head when you're thinking about your children, because it is true. Training children, discipline and training takes a lot of time. And correction is a part of that, and punishment is a part of that. But that's not what discipline really means. It means training. And you remember we learned last week, what are we ultimately training for? To teach our children to love the Lord with all their heart, with all their soul, and with all their might. And if that's kind of the filter through which everything flows, we are on the right track. That's awesome. So let's talk about a few areas. First, we're going to start with the 0 to 6 area, years old. That is when you teach them who's in control. You set up who the authority is, and that would be you. That would be me. One of the things I like to tell women about this age group is if it won't look good on a teenager, then it shouldn't be tolerated in a 2-year-old. So if you don't want a teenager that's whiny, bratty, and disrespectful, you've got to get that under control when they're 2. You don't want to be dealing with that here. So we have that first stage where you're kind of setting up the boundaries and setting who's in control and who the authority is. And then we move into the next phase, and that is really the phase of teacher. There are so many teaching opportunities that hit here. Between the 6 and 12-year-old stage, it's also for many children, especially the latter part of that. We all remember those preteen, awkward middle school times where you feel bad about everything about you, your body, your face, your hair. You feel bad about everything. And we have huge opportunities again there to point them toward the Savior and where their true identity really is. I also really try to instill in my kids during that time period. You remember how we talked about last week that we need to teach our children that God sees it all? And we really do need to teach them not just that He sees the bad, but that He sees the good, the things that they do that are right and good, and that He wants to bless them. But it was during this time I really wanted to instill in them, if I didn't catch them in their sin, or if I just didn't know, that God always did know. I've had times when I had a child talking to me and I really kind of felt like they were lying to me. Have you ever had that where you think they are, but you don't know for sure and they're denying it? And I felt like I couldn't move forward because I kind of didn't have enough proof. And so I would say to them at the end of it, I don't know, because I'm not God and I don't know, but the Lord God does know. Because I wanted to point them toward, it wasn't really that they got away with it with me. It was that they have a relationship with the Lord and they can't get away from it from Him, right? That it's always there. And then we move into those, what some people think are the dreaded teenage years, kind of that 13 to 18 group, where you really are coach. And I'm going to tell you, those years are not to be feared. If you have done a job here and laid a foundation here, those years can be amazing. We have 5 kids and 4 of my children right now are teenagers, and it's awesome. People hear that and they go, oh, bless your heart. It's really awesome because we started here with them understanding who was in control. And so now we get to enjoy the fruit, really, of where they are. This really kind of hit me in the head not too long ago. I walked into the kitchen and my son, who is 17, was standing there. He's 6'2". He's bigger than I am. He's stronger than I am. He's faster than I am. I asked him to do something. He said, yes, ma'am. And I was so overwhelmed in that moment thinking, he could make our lives hell on earth. He could. But he doesn't. So why doesn't he? Because we established a long time ago who was in control, and it wasn't him. It was me. So why does he obey me now? See, when he was little, it might have been because they didn't want the punishment. They didn't want the consequence. Okay, like I said, he's bigger, stronger, and faster. So what keeps him there now? Well, because along the way, he's built respect for me. And he would tell you that I've always treated him respectfully. He loves me. He loves the Lord. And so he obeys out of respect for me and a respect for the Lord. Could you ask for better fruit than that? And some people might say, well, you know, that's probably your complacent child. Yeah, no, it's not. That is the child out of the 5 of them that I really thought I was going to kill most of the time. He was just such a handful. And he's an amazing young man. And it was hard. There were days that were really, really difficult. There were months. There were years that were difficult with that child. And then to watch the fruit of that absolutely blows me away. Then we have the 18 and older. Now, this is when you become friend to your child. This is not the time to micromanage their life. We've really trained them to leave, right? That's not a bad thing. We should have been equipping them all along with all the tools they have to leave. So it's not a time to micromanage them. It is a time to be their friend. It is a time to pray more and say less. Now, if you have a child that lives in your home and you are still financially responsible for that child, for college, or if they're away at college and you are financially invested, there should be some standards that they're going to need to abide by. And instead of it feeling like if they don't abide by them, you're kicking them out, no. They're choosing that. So you're saying, here are the guidelines. I would love to continue to bless you in this way, but if they're living in a sinful lifestyle or they're just not following the house rules that the 2 of you have set up together, whatever that is, then it's okay to say, if you choose not to abide by this, then we're going to pull back the financial stuff. So they're choosing that. It's their choice, but they walk away from the finances, but you definitely still have a hand in that. We should always discipline with affection, whether it's really correction or just in our training. We should be affectionate toward our children. I remember when I had disobeyed my mom and she sent me to my room, which I'm just telling you, that's the worst. Isn't it worse to just sit in there and wait for him to come? Or when they say, wait till your dad gets home, isn't that just, it just grips you with fear. And I was waiting on her. I was sitting on my bed and my door was open and I could see catty corner into her room. And she knelt down at the end of her bed and she prayed before she came in to deal with me. And it made a huge impression on me. And I'm so glad to have been raised by parents who drew a strict line, who followed through with what they said, but did it with discipline. And my mother understood this was about a whole lot more than behavior modification. We can get behavior modification, we can guilt them, we can do whatever to get that. My mom understood she wanted this discipline to point me toward the Savior. So that's where she went before she came to me. An amazing heritage that she passed down to me. The next thing I want to tell you is don't tolerate bad behavior. Most parents would say that they don't. They don't tolerate bad behavior. Well, I'm going to give you a couple of examples to show you what I mean by this. And the one I'm going to give you is really for a smaller child, but I'm telling you, whether it's a juice cup or car keys, this example will go for any age. So you just modify it to where you are. We've all been in the kitchen and your child comes in and they have their whiny voice on and they say, "Mommy, can I have some juice?" And so what do? We reach for the juice cup, and as we're handing it to them, we say, "Do not whine like that. I don't like it when you whine. That's ugly." And we think we handled it, right? Because we told them. But what did they get? What they wanted. So what incentive do they have to not do that next time? Zero. So what if this time, when that same child comes in and whines, we never move? We just turn and say, "Oh my goodness." Now, do you see? I'm not angry. I'm not yelling. I'm not even frustrated. They might be driving me nuts, but I'm not letting them know that. And I'm saying, "Oh my goodness, you're whining. I really can't, I don't hear very good when you're whining. Can you ask me in your big girl or big boy voice?" And maybe we're even modeling that for them. Can you say, "May I have a drink, please?" I'm telling you, 90% of the time, that's it. They'll put on that voice, they'll ask you, you'll grab the cup, and as you're giving it to them, you'll act like they asked you from the beginning. You'll say, "Oh, that was so good. Thank you for using your big boy or big girl voice." And you hand them their cup. But I'm going to tell you, there's that 10% of children who are stubborn and obstinate. I raised one, I know. That when you say that, they either go into a total fit on the floor or melt into tears. Okay? So what would be easier? Just to hand them a cup? Yeah, it would. But they learn then, whatever they do, you're not going to follow through. Okay? Not such a big deal, except it really will make your life miserable when they're two. But let's pull that on ahead. Now, you have no authority. When you say, "I don't think so," yeah, you know what they hear? Yeah, she'll give in eventually. Sometimes that little incident turns into a 2-hour deal over a juice cup. I'm not even joking, because now we're in the bed, on their bed, sitting on their bed, telling them they can't act like that. When they can stop doing that, then they can come out. It becomes a big deal. But it will pay off, I promise you. Parenting is not complicated, but it's really hard. Another area that seems to be kind of a common problem is that of interrupting. So this is what we always did in my house. Let's say you and I are having this great conversation, and my child runs in, and they all will do it, and they'll do it over and over again. And you remember we said, training. Parents always ask me, "When does that stop?" Yeah, it doesn't. Till they leave sometimes. Sometimes you think, how many times we're going to have to go through this? It's just the way it is. Okay, so we're having a conversation, and the child runs in, "Mama, mama, mama, mama," because they do that, don't they? Okay, so I can say, "You always interrupt. That drives me nuts. What do you want?" What incentive do they have? And now I made a ding-dong of myself in front of my friend, right? What we've taught our children to do is when they come in and they need to interrupt, and we practice this when there's no friend around, they put their hand on my leg, they put their hand on my shoulder, they stand by my side, and I'm very aware that they need something. So this time, when you and I are talking and my child runs in and says, "Mama, mama, 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 mama," I say, "Excuse me just a second. Is that the way we interrupt at our house?" Because remember, I've taught it, right? And I go right back to my conversation. Our rule is, unless you're bleeding or broken and I need to come immediately, then you can interrupt without holding your hand on my shoulder, but otherwise you will wait. So now they know that's their cue. They're going back to the proper way. And I go back to my conversation. I'm just making stuff up at this point because we're always training, always. If your children are in the vicinity, you're training. So I talk for a second and then I say, oh, thank you so much for waiting. What can I help you with? And sometimes you have to just do that over and over again, but they will get it. So anything you see that you think, that's an area we need to work on, really ask yourself, have I kind of been tolerating the bad behavior? I think I've dealt with it because I'm saying it, but ultimately they're getting what they want. And remember, back to affection, we're never screaming and yelling and going nuts. It takes longer to train, but it is calmer. It is not this outburst of, don't do that. Right? Always, always discipline direct disobedience. Do not ever tolerate direct disobedience. So there should not be slamming doors and rolling of eyes and stomping off and telling you no and talking to you disrespectfully. That should always, always be addressed. Do not let that go in your mind and think, well, that's just what teenagers do, or that's what hormonal girls do. We're just making excuses. No, we're not going to do that. That should always be addressed. Oftentimes, really, that's just a dialogue. That's just a talking. Whoa, we do not walk off like that. How should we handle that? And we're asking questions, and we're getting a dialogue going, right? And we're giving them the tools that they need, because the bottom line is they're not going to always like your decision. We can't expect them to go, yes, ma'am, whatever. That's not what we're looking for, but we are looking for respect, even in their disappointment or their anger. And if you can teach your children how to handle themselves, give them the tools they need when they're angry, when they're disappointed, of the proper way to show those things, you're not just helping your home right now to be happy. You're helping them with their mate. You're helping them with their children someday, because they understand how to handle themselves. And there won't be these explosions and these fits of crying and fits of rage, because you've helped them with tools that they need. So we should always discipline for direct and disrespectful disobedience. But we should never discipline or correct for childishness. All kids have childish tendencies. Kids track things in, they muddy things up. Kids are messy, kids are clumsy, kids are dirty. Now, should they be taught to clean up? Absolutely. Teach them to clean up after themselves. We kind of have those swaps sometimes, and I see myself in that sometimes. I get upset over the things that are just tracked in and spilt, maybe because they affect me more. And the real hard issues, sometimes we overlook, we let those go. And really, it should be opposite. I don't want to drop a glass and be in fear that somebody's going to run in and start screaming at me and yelling at me when it was an accident. Kids have accidents. Teach them to clean up. So if you say, you're stinky, go get a bath, and they tell you no, well, now we have a problem. But being stinky is part of being a kid. And don't think they're going to outgrow that. You know that kind of, you get a new puppy dog, and they get to be bigger, and their ears are bigger, and their feet are bigger, and they follow. Well, that's what teenage boys are like. It just keeps on going. We need to teach them respect. We need to teach them just the normal, easy things like please and thank you and being on time. My daughter got a job at a tea room, and she had not been there very long. And I went in, and the owner of the tea room was absolutely gushing about my daughter and how amazing she is, on and on and on. And you know what made me sad about that? My daughter is amazing. She's got some amazing qualities that lady doesn't know. She doesn't know how generous she is. She doesn't know how thoughtful she is. You know what she was basing that amazingness on? She's on time. She says please and thank you. She does what she's supposed to do. She does it with a good attitude. We live in a culture where those things set you apart. It shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. But it is. So we absolutely, and listen, you've got to start that at home. Because don't we oftentimes get out somewhere and we kind of hear our kids through somebody else's hearing, and we think, ooh, might need to work on that. Doesn't sound good. Training grounds at home for the please and the thank yous and I'm sorries. And then now in this culture, we have a whole new set of dynamics because we have all these electronics. And our kids need to understand what is rude with electronics. So I'm going to tell you what we do at my house, and that is none of my children have phones until they are 16. And then when they do get a phone, it's not a smart one. It's one that they can have limited text and calling on, because I'm not really paying for them to talk to their friends 4,000 times in a month. I'm paying so I can get in touch with them. What that has done for us, which may sound so cruel in today's world that those kids don't have iPhones, it's taught them to wait. That's a luxury. That is not a necessity. It is a luxury. It's a luxury, not a necessity. It's taught them to wait. It's taught them to appreciate what they have, but they're not on their phones all the time because it's not a big deal. I've told people, put a basket by the table and tell your family, during dinner, this is where all electronics go and they need to be off. I don't want to hear buzzing and beeping and anybody to be distracted. I want us to enjoy our time together here without that. And on top of that, it's rude. Your children should know that it's rude to do this while anybody's talking to them, whether it's one of their friends or an adult. Have you ever been to a restaurant and see a family around a table and they're all on their electronics? And I'm just telling you, if it's happening there, you know what's going on at home? Same thing. They're eating in front of a television, they're eating with their iPhones, right there with them. They've got headsets on. Teach them. You may wear your earphones, but when I begin to talk to you, you don't go, huh? Or, huh? You are to remove those because that's respectful. Just general things like that. And it'll set your kids apart. It really will, just some basic things. We do not need to make excuses for our children. Oh my goodness, we live in a culture where that is a big thing. Parents always make excuses for their children. I was thinking about this because it drives me so nuts, and I thought, really that's sin nature. Because how many of us, when we do something wrong, our first thought is an excuse? We do that ourselves. We have to fight that sometimes. We kind of want to say, well, I was late because, no, I was late because I was late, and I'm really sorry. I don't need to make an excuse. So we really do that with our kids. And then we teach them they're not responsible for anything. I love what Linda says about someday you'll stand before the Lord alone. And I so want to teach that to my children, that they alone are responsible for their actions and reactions, and I alone am responsible for my actions and reactions as it pertains to my children. I will stand before the Lord all by myself. So just because I've got a kid that's driving me nuts doesn't give me an excuse to yell and scream, and I'm still responsible all by myself. I won't get to say, do you remember the children you gave me? It'll be about what I did with what I've got. So let's not make excuses for our kids. Oftentimes parents are so busy kind of making that trail flat for them so their kids won't have any bumps in the road, and they don't prepare their kid for the trail, for the path. They're going to hit some bumps, and we need to be there to help them and help them navigate. But we don't need to make all their paths straight and less bumpy. It's hurtful out there sometimes, and we need to help them with that. We should teach our children responsibility. From the youngest of age, they need to learn if they dump it out, they can put it back. We started with our kids teaching them how to do chores, and a lot of that, Mom, is getting in there with them. They need to learn side by side with you. And like we said, it takes a lot of time to train. It is easier to do it yourself. It really is. And so oftentimes we're in such a hurry, we just get in there and do it ourselves. And we're not taking the opportunity to train. Lots of lessons, how to do a job good, singing songs, just spending time with you instead of a television while you're cleaning up. They can learn to do that right alongside of you. And the beauty of that is, as they come up, they know how to do that. It's beneficial for you and for them in the long run. It's just harder in those days to do that. With our kids, we started, I don't even know, when they were 3 or 4, they started helping us with their own laundry. And so we have baskets for each of our kids, their own basket that they put their clothes in at the end of the day. And so once a week, that child would come with me and we would sort their laundry, because they can do that. And we would put it in the wash together and they would pour the detergent in. They love to do all of that. And then we'd move it over into the dryer together and take it out and fold it. And this was a weekly thing for years and years. So they learned how to do that sufficiently. And the magic age for us was about 9 or 10 that they took that over on their own. So I have 5 kids. They all do their own laundry. They strip their own beds and they do their own clothes. That's a way that we worked side by side with them. I don't want them to leave my house and not know how to do laundry and not know how to cook just a basic, simple meal. I kind of feel like I failed if I did that. I didn't train them for the real world. So all along the way, we've given them jobs and tasks to do. And as they get older, those jobs get bigger. In our house, we don't give allowances. And that's just my thing. I feel like nobody gives me an allowance for cooking a meal at night. And so we don't give allowances for that. What we do is there are some basic things that is just part of being a part of a family. And so they do those things. And then if they want to earn extra money, I have a little basket. And basically it's the stuff that I don't have time to get to that I really want done. And I put that job and I assign an amount by it and they can choose. Some of them are easy, some of them are difficult, some of them have higher dollars on them because they're more difficult. And they can choose that to make money. And so then I'm not just paying them for the sake of paying them. They're getting to earn it. And it's funny when you have a child that comes to you and says, I want the latest, greatest video game, and they want you to buy it for them. They're very ready for you to buy it for them. Oftentimes when they've had to work for it a little bit, they reconsider that a little bit. They might like to keep that money more than they do that game. But if they do get the game or whatever it is, they appreciate it. And I'm not saying don't bless your children with things. I'm not. But teach them responsibility. Teach them to be good stewards of their money while they're in your hands, right? You know, for me, parenting is like this big field. And inside this field, there is great freedom, okay? But everybody wants to look outside the field, because what do we see outside the field? Oh my goodness, it looks beautiful and exciting and fun. But what I know as a parent is all on this outside area, they're landmines. You can't see them, but I know they're there and they're going to explode. And so what I've said to my kids is, as long as you stay in these parameters, huge freedom. This is not oppressive. That looks like freedom, but it's not. And that's really what God said to us. That's the sad part about people looking in from the outside on Christianity sometimes, because they think it's oppressive. And I think, no, it's freedom. Because God said, if you operate right here, do what you want within these bounds. It's when you get out here that there are hidden things that are just waiting to take you out that we don't even understand. And I want my kids to get that. I want them to understand great freedom right here. I don't want them to leave and think, God, it was really oppressive in my house. There were just all these rules of do's and don'ts. No, I want them to see a house that was full of love, full of freedom, as long as you stayed within the bounds. And with our kids, as they get older, as they make wiser choices, as they're more responsible, we kind of broaden that a little bit. Make a bad choice, things aren't doing so good, yeah, things kind of close in a little bit. But still, freedom within these bounds. If we can help our children understand that, we're not just teaching them about the discipline that goes on in our home. We're teaching them about a life lesson for when they leave. Remember, ultimately we're training them to leave. And we're training them for what? To love the Lord with all their heart, with all their soul, and with all their might. So you have to think, what path am I on? This is the path. At the end of that path, that's what I want it to look like. So if you're headed down this path of screaming and whining and disrespectfulness, you're not even on the path with the end in mind that you want to go on. An amazing woman parents with the end in mind. An amazing woman is an amazing mom.
I am uniquely equipped as a parent of a prodigal. Larry and I were blessed with 7 children, and 3 of those had a season of prodigal living. Our children were raised in church. They attended Sunday school weekly. All 7 of them made professions of faith. Larry and I prayed on our knees for our children daily. Our oldest son was our first prodigal. We did not see it coming, and we were not prepared. We made lots of poor decisions, thinking boys will be boys, and his friends are such a bad influence. My reaction was anger. How dare you treat us like this? Praise God, number 1, son's prodigal journey was short-lived. He is a fine grown man with a precious family. Our second prodigal was our middle son, David. We adopted David at age 3 from an abusive home situation. God knit my heart to David's heart, and at age 17, when he began to lose touch with reality and exhibit some psychotic symptoms, it was a toss-up as to which one was going under first, David or Mom. The Lord took David home at age 20, where he was healed, and I look forward to seeing him again. This brings me to my precious prodigal, our 7th child and youngest daughter. When Precious started her journey into the far country, it was with a bang. We wrote contracts, we took away privileges, we lectured, we snooped, and we yelled. I prayed to God to do a work in my daughter, and instead, God began a work in me. The Lord spoke to me through His Word and taught me to pour out my heart to Him. I don't know if I have ever before or since felt that God was literally praying through me. At age 20, Precious was pregnant. She made 2 good choices. One was to keep the baby, and the other was not to marry the boyfriend. It was a rocky road at first, but God used that little boy to work some big miracles in her life and in ours. In 2008, she married her 6th grade boyfriend, a fine man who did not share her past. He adopted that little boy at age 3, who is now a big brother to 2 sweet little girls, and my precious prodigal has become my best friend. There isn't a day that we don't talk on the phone or see each other. Often in our deepest heartaches, our Lord will teach us things that we would not know apart from the painful journey. Psalm 119:71 says, "It was good for me to be afflicted so that I might learn your decrees."